The story of Lawrence Nomanyagbon Anini is not just a tale of a thief. It is the dark, bloody saga of a nation held by the throat. In the mid-1980s, Bendel State, which today comprises Edo and Delta states, was plunged into a paralyzing state of terror. At just 26 years old, Anini, a former skilled taxi driver and motorpark enforcer, transformed into the most vicious armed robber in Nigerian history. He called himself the Law, and the atrocities he commanded were staggering in their brutality.
Let's go! Come here! I'm even Lawrence Nomanyagbon Anini.
Anini and his heavily armed syndicate did not just rob, they waged a literal war against the state. They stormed banks in broad daylight, turning quiet avenues into active war zones. During the infamous Agbor bank robbery and the first bank attack at Sabongida-Ora, innocent civilians and bank workers were caught in a hail of bullets. But Anini's most chilling atrocity was his systematic slaughter of law enforcement. With his ruthless enforcer and sharpshooter, Osunbor by his side, the gang hunted policemen with terrifying efficiency, killing nearly a dozen officers in a matter of months. To confuse his pursuers and build a perverse Robin Hood mythology, Anini would frequently drive through bustling marketplaces, hurling wads of blood-stained stolen naira notes into the air, watching as desperate market women scrambled for the cash while he made his getaway. The terrifying reality was that Anini was not a ghost or a mystic, despite the folklore that claimed he could vanish into thin air. His absolute power was derived from the ultimate betrayal of public trust. How does a street-level thug outmaneuver the entire Nigerian police force? The answer was Deputy Superintendent of Police, George Iyamu.
The only success Anini was recording was just because Anini had an insider who happened to be DSP George Iyamu. George Iyamu was the supro in terms of operation. So when Anini plans operation, George Iyamu tells him, don't go to that direction.
Go this direction.
Go this direction. I will not send my boys to your direction.
Iyamu was a high-ranking corrupt officer who had built a quiet reputation for hobnobbing with underworld capons. Seeing the ruthless ambition in the young Anini, Iyamu forged a sinister alliance. In exchange for a massive cut of the stolen loot, Iyamu became the gang's chief patron. He supplied Anini with police-issue weapons and provided highly classified intelligence on police patrols and checkpoints.
How did you become the prophet? What makes you the prophet?
Whenever the police laid an ambush, Anini already knew where they were. Iyamu was the Judas who sold the lives of his own colleagues for the fleeting wealth of the underworld. The Anini phenomenon became a profound national embarrassment. The turning point arrived in October 1986 at the highest level of government. The military president of Nigeria, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, had watched the situation deteriorate to the point where citizens lived in absolute dread. Following a tense meeting of the Armed Forces Ruling Council at Dodan Barracks, a visibly frustrated Babangida cornered the Inspector General of Police, Etim Inyang, in a public lobby. The military head of state looked the highest police officer in the country in the eye and delivered a single humiliating ultimatum. My friend, where is Anini?
For matters of the moment, which require immediate resolution, we intend to pursue a determined program of action, and indeed future generations have no other country but Nigeria.
That question echoed across the nation and sparked the most intense manhunt in Nigerian law enforcement history. The mandate was clear: bring down the law at all costs. The myth of the vanishing kingpin finally came crashing down on December 3rd, 1986. Acting on a tip-off, a special police task force led by Superintendent of Police Kayode Wanreroro descended on a seemingly ordinary house at number 26, Oyemosa Street in Benin City. Wanreroro burst into the room and demanded to know where Anini was. The dreaded kingpin, caught off guard in the company of his girlfriends, attempted to bluff his way out. When the police recognized him, the supposed phantom made a desperate dash to escape. There was no magic. There was only the deafening crack of a police rifle. A bullet shattered Anini's left leg, dropping the warlord to the floor in a pool of his own blood. From that moment on, the mighty cartel boss was reduced to a helpless captive. In the military hospital, the damage to his shattered leg was so severe that doctors were forced to amputate it. Confined to a wheelchair, the pain and the realization of his impending doom broke his legendary silence. In his hospital bed, surrounded by heavily armed guards, Anini sang like a bird, confessing to his horrific crimes and pulling back the curtain on his network. The months that followed stripped away whatever remained of his dark glamour. In a military hospital, the damage to his shattered leg was deemed irreversible. The limb was amputated. The young, athletic kingpin who had vaulted over walls and danced through police barricades was now confined to a wheelchair, a helpless captive. During the intense interrogations and the subsequent military tribunal, the criminal underworld collapsed in on itself. The public watched in stunned fascination as Anini, realizing the end was near, turned on his protectors. In a dramatic courtroom confrontation, the amputee pointed a trembling finger at DSP George Iyamo, exposing the depth of the corrupt officer's complicity. When Justice James Omwagege handed down the death sentences, his words echoed with a profound historical weight. He looked at the 26-year-old before him and declared that Anini would forever be remembered in the history of crime in the country, but it would be of unblessed memory. And so, we arrive back at the execution ground on that fateful March morning. The crowd surged forward, eager to see the monsters who had held their lives hostage. But as the military convoy arrived and the prisoners were unloaded, a profound hush swept through the onlookers. There was no towering giant. There was no defiant warlord. Instead, the crowd watched as a frail, one-legged young man was lifted from a vehicle. Lawrence Anini had to be physically carried by soldiers to the wooden execution stake. He was a broken shell, his face etched with the inescapable terror of his impending doom. Beside him, they dragged Monday Osunbor, the once fearsome enforcer, now reduced to a terrified mortal. And finally, DSP George Iyamo, a man who had once worn the respected uniform of the Nigerian police force, now stripped of his rank, his dignity, and his honor, bound to the wood like the common criminals he had nurtured. As the firing squad, composed of stern-faced soldiers, marched into position and raised their rifles, one cannot help but feel an overwhelming, suffocating sense of tragedy. This story does not seek to absolve these men of their horrific crimes. The pain they inflicted, the lives they cut short, and the innocent blood that stained the streets of Bendel State can never be washed away. But as we look upon the pathetic sight of Lawrence Anini on his last day, we are forced to mourn the devastating, senseless waste of human potential. Here was a young man with undeniable charisma, a brilliant strategic mind, and an extraordinary capacity for leadership. He possessed a natural intelligence that allowed him to outsmart entire government institutions. Imagine for a moment if the society around him had nurtured those gifts. Imagine if that brilliance had been channeled into education, into engineering, into building his community. Lawrence Anini could have been a true leader. He could have been a hero whose name was spoken with reverence, rather than a cautionary tale whispered in fear. Instead, he was seduced by the dark, empty promise of the underworld. He believed the lie that violence equated to power. He believed that holding a gun made him a king. But true power is not found in the fear you instill in others. It is found in the lives you elevate. Violence is not a throne, it is a cage. And on that dusty morning in Benin City, the cage had finally closed. The commanding officer's voice rang out, sharp and uncompromising, cutting through the heavy morning air. The order was given. The deafening roar of a dozen military rifles shattered the silence. The bodies of the condemned jerked violently against the ropes, taking the full, unforgiving weight of justice. When the gun smoke finally cleared, and the echoes of the rifles faded into the distance, the myth of Lawrence Anini was officially dead. The phantom was gone, leaving behind only the broken remains of a misguided youth. The story of the last day of Lawrence Anini is not merely a historical true crime footnote. It is a mirror held up to society, demanding that we look at what we are creating. It is a plea to the youth of today, a stark and vital warning about the seductive, destructive path of quick wealth and violence.